sitting at my desk in my third grade classroom, and my entire body is shaking. I can't take a deep breath because it feels like there are a million bricks on my chest. I'm hysterically sobbing. And I look over at my third grade teacher, desperate for some help. And she looks back at me with these wide, fearful eyes. I can tell she has no idea what to do. She sees a student that is a disruption in her classroom, which is true, and I'm also a student that's having an anxiety attack. But because my teacher doesn't know what to do, she sends me to the principal's office. And this happens day after day after day. I have an anxiety attack. My teacher has no idea what to do. And I wind up in the principal's office. But I'm here to tell you how the act of taking 5 minutes during the academic day to press pause and learn concrete stress and anxiety reducing tools completely changed the trajectory of my life. But for most of my schooling career, school did not take the time to acknowledge students' mental health, nor did it take the time to teach me concrete tools. So my parents were left to their own devices. They got me access to therapists, and they would advocate to the school internally to try to get me more help internally. But because I did well academically, school wasn't too concerned about my anxiety. And therefore, my anxiety got much worse, and my anxiety attacks became more frequent. And by the time I was 13, I'd had over 400 anxiety attacks. But luckily, also at the age of 13, I'd have been awarded a full scholarship to a private school that was known to help students with anxiety. So on my first day at my new school, my mom's about to drop me off. We pull up to the school building, and I feel the million bricks hit my chest. I feel paralyzed. And I whisper to my mom, I can't go in. And my mom says, I'm getting Mrs. Inwood. And now I'm really having an anxiety attack because Mrs. Inwood is the school director. So here I am once again on my first day at my new school, and I'm getting in trouble. And sure enough, moments later, my mom and Mrs. Inwood walk out of the school building together. But Mrs. Inwood does the most horrifying thing she could do in that moment. She tells my mom to go for a walk, and she opens up the driver's side door of my mother's car and sits down. And I look at her terrified. But she looks back at me with these loving eyes, and she says, honey, what are you feeling right now? And this question really strikes me. It causes me to pause, because for most of my life, educators had not taken the time to ask that question. They always asked me the question, are you okay? And I always found that question to be infuriating, because if you just looked at me, you could tell I wasn't okay. But what are you feeling right now was a different type of question. It was an invitation to create a sense of self-awareness. It was an invitation to name my anxiety so that I could tame it. So I start to describe to her what I'm experiencing. I tell her about the million bricks on my chest, and I tell her that I'm really afraid of getting in trouble for having anxiety because it's something I don't know how to control. And then she does the most profound thing she could do in that moment. She gives me a hug. She tells me I'm safe, and she says my only job is to get into the school building each day. And let me tell you, it's incredibly difficult for me to get into the school building each day. But there are two things that make it possible. The first is that my teachers are not afraid of my anxiety. They know what to do. So when I'm starting to feel anxious and my breath starts to become chaotic, my teachers actually slow their breath down, because they know that their ability to self-regulate and manage their own emotions is crucial to the development of my ability to self-regulate and manage my own emotions. And the second thing they do is that they take these bite-sized moments throughout the day to press pause, acknowledge our mental health, and provide us with concrete tools. In fact, every morning in homeroom, my high school principal, Mr. Quirk, guides our entire high school through a mindful body scan, where we check in with each part of our bodies. And I notice After every body scan, I feel a greater sense of calm and peace and readiness to learn. And by the time I graduate high school, I'm no longer suffering from anxiety. And instead, I have this toolbox of tools I can use at any moment. And that's an incredibly empowering space to be. And when I get to college, I realized the inequity in my education experience. I'd been extremely blessed to get a full scholarship to a private school that put students' mental health first. But I believe all students deserve to learn these tools. In college, I wondered, what if someone like Thomas Edison, who was so integral to our everyday lives with the invention of the light bulb, what if he had had anxiety and was treated like I was in 3rd grade? Would we lose the invention of the light bulb? I believe we lose so much innovation, creativity, and genius when we don't take the time to acknowledge students' mental health. And the reality is, our students are suffering. The National Education Association has labeled the rate of student anxiety as an epidemic. And currently, we're living in a national state of emergency for youth mental health. In a perfect world, we'd have the recommended ratio of school counselors to students, which should be about 250 students to 1 school counselor. But on average, we have 424 students to 1 school counselor. And in a perfect world, we'd have adequate and accessible therapy for our young people. But we don't live in that perfect world. So what's the next thing we can do in the space they spend a significant portion of their days in? School. Well, in college, I also reflected that my teachers were the first responders to my anxiety always, but they never really knew what to do. So I started to interview teachers. And I found that teachers received almost no mental health training, yet they deeply cared about their students' mental health and well-being. And teachers were willing to take 5 minutes out of class time to focus on students' mental health and provide them with a tool. They just didn't have the time nor capacity to make those materials. And that's when I said, okay, that will be my job. And so I started an education nonprofit called Asset Education. And what we do is we train and equip educators in a curriculum of bite-sized tools designed to help students reduce their stress, learn to self-regulate, and strengthen their resilience. We do this using the practices of mindfulness and positive psychology. We use mindfulness because it's the practice of paying attention on purpose without judgment. Researchers have actually found that mindfulness reduces the reactivity in our amygdalas, the portion of our brains that's responsible for the fight, flight, or freeze response. And we use positive psychology because it's a scientific study of our strengths that enable us to thrive. And positive psychologists have found that happiness is a greater predictor of success than having a strong work ethic or getting good grades. So at Asset, what we do is we take these 2 concepts and we distill them into 96 bite-sized tools. And I know you're probably wondering, can 5 minutes really make an impact in a student's life? And the answer is overwhelmingly yes. At Asset, we partnered with the Denver Public Schools Imaginarium Innovation Lab and found that 60% of Asset students learning just 1 tool once a week for an entire academic year, 60% experienced a statistically significant reduction in their stress. And 82% reported using the tools outside of the class they initially learned them in. And you're probably wondering, can this really be done in public schools? Well, in fact, that's the majority of Asset's partners. Let's take, for example, Denver South High School, which is led by the remarkable principal, Bobby. Bobby knows what's good for students is good for adults. So every Monday in Homeroom, JC, the school health professional, guides the entire staff through a mindful body scan or a gratitude practice, and then staff then implement that tool with their students later in the week. And KC, a social and emotional learning specialist, she takes 5 minutes after every safety drill. After every fire drill, every active shooter drill, she makes sure the entire school takes 5 minutes to press pause and practice a grounding exercise. And Jesse and Mariah, 2 ninth grade humanities teachers, they take 5 minutes every Wednesday So the first thing they do in their class, they press pause and they practice a tool like finger breathing, where students hold a finger and take a deep breath. And I know it may seem counterintuitive to take time out of academics to focus on students' mental health. But the reality is we're not biologically designed to convert short-term memory into long-term memory when we're stressed. So by actually taking the time to press pause and help students get out of the stress response, we're then able to actually put them in a better position to learn. Currently at Asset, we impact 40,000 students each week, 40,000 middle and high school students. But there are 15 million high school students in this country. So my invitation to the educators, the school counselors, the teachers, principals, listening to this talk, I encourage you to press pause, take 5 minutes, and tell your students, I see you, I hear you, I know it's really hard right now, and we're gonna practice a tool. And I promise, if you do this consistently, it will make a positive impact on their lives. I know this to be true because it made a positive impact on mine. Thank you.